You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Science Marvel Comics Podcast, episode 35. This is the legacy number 535. I'm here with my man, Matt. What up, Matt?
What up, Jim?
What up? And we have pretty much Blood Hunt every time, all the time. Now, we have one book, I guess, tonight that we're not going to be dealing with Blood Hunt, and maybe we should have just dealt with the Blood Hunt after we get to that, but we'll see. But just as an aside, it is a dedication that we'll have later to all the smackasses out there, and I'll explain that later, even though we usually don't curse here, but I'm feeling a little sassy tonight. Well, we have all of the Blood Hunt stuff, but before we get to that, please check us out all over the intranets. We're on the Twitters at Weird Science DC. Follow us and follow you back. You can go and read Gabe's Sus reviews over on our Marvel website, WeirdScienceMarvelComics.com. Check out videos at our YouTube page, which is Weird Science Comics. And then, if you would be so obliged, go to our Patreon, patreon.com/WeirdScience to help us out for everything we do. Plus, get a lot of extra content. Me and Matt do a bunch of shows, and we do shows with just about everybody, but a ton of Marvel stuff, DC, indie, and even manga, stuff like that. But you also can get this in advance. We usually put up the Marvel podcast on a Wednesday, and so you don't have to wait till Saturday when sometimes I put it out. I often forget. It's the worst timing that I have for that thing, because while I'm supposed to be putting up the Marvel podcast, which I've already finished and it's edited, and just that's the problem. It's up on Wednesday. I'm doing a lot of the DC stuff Saturday night, and then when I go to bed, I realize the next morning, oh crap. So that's even better. It's actually extra early access. But like I said, we're going to be doing the Blood Hunt, and we're going to start with The Amazing Spider-Man. It's The Amazing Spider-Man number 49. It's kind of a weird thing. I was talking to you before we started, is we're getting to that big 50th. That's always going to be a big issue, but it's also really big because they've already shown us and announced that Peter, Spider-Man, is going to get the Goblin stuff again, Spider-Goblin. So the idea that this is tying into the Blood Hunt, I didn't even think in my mind that, okay, obviously nothing can continue in this book. You're not going to deal with that. It's going to be doing its own anniversary stuff and big stuff. So when we get to it, it is kind of, again, kind of a one-shot. We've had a couple of issues with Chasm and Hollow's Eve and Goblin Queen that they seem kind of like, okay, you're not really all these are getting ready for the 50th issue. So you kind of have that little space here to throw an issue in. And the thing is, I was looking forward. I have a video that I anticipate, my most anticipated comics of the week. And I actually put this on there. And a lot of people threw shade at me, saying, oh my God, what do you got? Stockholm Syndrome? What? Even people who just showed up, for that one video yelling, oh, are you one of those lame-os that likes the spy? I'm like, no. The reason I'm anticipating this is because it's kind of a one-shot, and it's not Zeb Wells dealing with his own story. He's dealing with somebody else's story, the Blood Hunt thing. And I thought, maybe it'll be interesting. See if, pretty much all the pressure's off him. Maybe he could do something. Mainly because, most people have completely forgotten the Hellions book that he did with the X-Men, which was really good. And so when you're doing all this, he does have some things that people like. So I thought maybe this will be the issue that we see. If he can get away from his own self and not trip over himself constantly like he does, maybe he can have some fun. I don't know. I think he might have.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's different for sure.
It is. So it is The Amazing Spider-Man number 49, and it is written by Zeb Wells, art by John Romita Jr., inks by Scott Hanna, colors by Marcelo Menez, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. And again, maybe with the pressure off and the kind of thing of like, let's just throw this out there. This is probably the best looking John Romita Jr. art we've had in this entire series. Me and you were
making
talking.
A big comeback here.
It looks really good. I was shocked. We talked about the cover. Cover looks like ass. It's terrible. It's awful. And we were laughing about it this week. And like, okay. So I start reading the book. I don't read the credits when we're just reading it to get ready to, talk about it. So I'm about halfway through, and I realized that oh man, there must be somebody else on this. Even though when you really look, you can notice some of the telltale signs. But I never at this point thought, oh my God, that kid has a bobblehead, or oh my God, that's really pencil. So I actually looked. I'm like, oh crap, it is him. And some of the better looking actual Spider-Man, art, and some of the facial expressions, even from the beginning, they look really good. I mean, it looks really good. At the beginning, you end up where it starts off, and you do have Kareem. And if you don't know Kareem, he's the guy with the bullseye on his bald head and all those earrings in his ear, where he finds out that White Rabbit has been turned into a vampire. Some guy, she's collecting money. She hasn't come back. He goes to check out. Now, little do we know, spoiler, he gets turned into one at this point, too. That's revealed a little bit later. But when you start the Spider-Man stuff, and pretty much all of New York City is just under vampire attack, I mean, they're swooping in, they're flying, just crazy. The art of the people running and reacting is really good. There's a lady on that panel. I'm like, that looks really good. And I don't know if it's that Scott Hanna or Marcelo Menez are stepping it up as well, because everything looks tighter to me. Everything looks better. I just don't get it. And so you get Peter, and he's going around. This is one of those things. The narration kind of is like, yeah, because he's saying, oh man, like, this is great. I usually have to, watch out for who I fight. Usually I have to worry because it might be some normal people, but these are vampires, so I could beat the crap out of them. I think that he would be smarter than that. It does come around to the end to be that bookend deal where he does then realize these are just regular people for the most part that were turned into vampires. But at this point, he's all into it, and they end up mentioning it. Also, I'll give everybody a shout out. Some people were hoping that possibly Paul got turned into a vampire so we could get him killed. He is not in this issue. I was waiting to see him. He is not going to be in this, but you get Mary Jane's taking care of the ants. Randy's doing some stuff, so that's kind of tightened up. And then Peter gets a message, a text on his phone, Peter's phone, that says, I'm in trouble.
He's been doing that a lot, too. People texting Peter to send Spider-Man to help him.
Yeah, he's really big on it. And it's always that deal when he shows up, he's got to fumble with the idea of Peter getting a hold. But most of the time, the people are calling Peter to get to this. I think this also is a setup for when we eventually get to it, when Tombstone ends up going and really going on to the deal. We might even be setting up where Kareem and White Rabbit would, help Peter, help Spider-Man, and the idea of the text. So we know he kind of knows. And you get the idea. They'll try to go after Peter. It's like getting Peter to get Paul, but instead of Paul, it's Spider-Man. But you end up where he gets this unknown text. And, when you're in the middle of a vampire apocalypse, you follow any unknown text. Like the idea that I'd even have that pop up. I'd have that blocked within seconds, but it pops up and it gives an address. And that's where you end up where Spider-Man goes off and sees Kareem. And it is funny, that play where he goes and like, how it's you, Kareem. And on the text, it says, it's me. And the funny, Peter says, or Spider-Man says, like, you said it's me. Like, nobody knows you. And then he has to play the deal of how do you get Peter's number? And he goes, oh, Tombstone has that number, in case he has to call you to, like, kill you. Yeah. And Peter's like, I'm out. And then you end up, once he hears White Rabbit, and because he's a good guy, and Kareem, he did it up. And there's actually some really good, like, feels moments in this, because Kareem does seem very desperate. We find out there's ulterior motives, but he has been hanging with White Rabbit. And he says to Spider-Man, you saved me without even knowing me. Like, you saved me because you're a good guy. Please, we have to save, White Rabbit. And then he says, and it's weird because the idea that Peter goes, she's been trying to kill me by hitting me with carrots. I'm like, okay,
yeah, that was a little...
But did you think at one point, now I said the art, I swear to God, right after that, I didn't think those were stakes. I thought they were carrots that he had, because he's like, hey, I got these at a construction site. He has all of these wooden stakes.
Where did he get those stakes from?
He says a construction site.
Yeah.
I guess you might have those, but it looks kind of like a little too much for that. I don't know. But, maybe he went to the, who ordered the steak store is what he did. But you ended up where Kareem says, we have to kill the vampire that turned White Rabbit. This is, and me and you, I'm not a big horror fan. You weren't aware. I do know some movies like a Lost Boys that do go with this theory. You have to kill the vampire that turned the person, then they turn back. It's kind of wonky, but
yeah, I don't know if it's ever been established in Marvel.
And I think that it's going to be the big rule where you get to the end. And I'm going to end up talking at one point, probably during the Doctor Strange review, about who I think the big bad is. I'll just tell you, I think it is Varney, the original vampire, and I think they're going to have to end up killing him to get everybody turned. That's how you get everything back, to normal. But
it's also there's how long it takes somebody to turn. Like in this, it's basically instantly you're a vampire after you get bitten.
Yeah, it seems instant. And then there's times where if you don't turn them, you could just eat them. There's a lot of
it should take
rules.
like days, I think.
Yeah, I guess you could just play it the way they play it. But yeah, they end up where the person who turned White Rabbit is trapped in this building. You have to avoid White Rabbit, but also then get this guy. Peter's like, yeah, okay, and at this point, again, remember, he's just full out vampires bad, and they deserve and can be killed. So he goes in with Kareem, and he gets sent into this room. They're like, we have him trapped in this room. Peter gets the stakes and goes in. I'm right with him, Peter, and there's some funny moments, actually, where he screams out.
Yeah.
And it's because there's rats. And you have Kareem outside the door. Well, are you okay? What was it, the vampire? He's like, no, it was rats. I hate rats so much. I hate mice. The other day I was recording with Gray.
Oh,
and
no.
as I'm recording, Tanya comes up and she has this like wrapped up thing in like a towel. And I look and I see this thing and I'm like, what is that? It looked like a crazy piece of wood. And I went and grabbed she had a mouse and it was its tail. And I grabbed it. I screamed like Peter. I was so upset.
Did one of the cats catch it or something?
Yeah, they were playing with it. And she felt bad. But she likes to, because I try to scare her. Like I'm one of those jerks that like hide behind things and jump out to scare her.
Yeah, jump scares.
And she gets so upset. Like she gets scared at anything. So she likes to get back at me with that. But I scream kind of like Peter there. And so it's funny. And he's getting spider sense, whatnot. He does get attacked by White Rabbit. But while that's going on, you end up, Kareem grabs her and takes her away in a shopping cart, it looks like, and puts her in a storage, facility, storage room, locks it up, says, I don't know how long that'll hold her. I don't really know how she gets out at one point.
Does he have the key to the lock? That's my question.
It doesn't look like it.
No.
And anyway, at the end, she kind of just like waltzes out. I don't get it, but it's White Rabbit. So he goes off then to get this guy who turned her. It was a guy that they're shaking down some monies, like a contractor or whatever. And Peter goes in. You're expecting this awful, awful vampire. It's just a dude, who has been turned, but he is chained up to the radiator in the room. You do see it at the beginning, but you're not really paying attention to that. And he also, you're throwing a lot of vampire rules in all these. Every book seems to have different vampire rules that are probably going to, mount up. But this is also the vampires that can read your mind, because Peter's thinking, all right, this looks like a monster. Look at this guy.
Yeah, there's a bunch of rules.
Yeah, and vampires can. But again, a lot of times when you play these, usually the big ones are the ones that get
more powerful. Yeah, not a guy that's been there
not
for 3
a contractor guy who's chained himself to a radiator, but you're playing for a joke because he's like thinking, this guy's a monster. I'm not a monster. Who are you calling a monster? Peter goes in, he's going to kill this guy, and the guy ends up like, oh, you're chained up. Who did that? And he says, I did. I don't want to hurt anybody. And explains it. And actually, I think it's written to a point pretty well. The idea, you actually feel bad for this guy. Like, and I actually wanted this guy to get a nice ending for what he's doing. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He just is a vampire and wants to be killed. He says, I mean, in the end, Kareem is going to do him a solid, I guess. But he's like, kill me. I'm in hell. This is awful. Peter's going to decide to kind of, be able to save these vampires instead. But he ends up like just upset. This guy didn't mean to do what he did. He ended up getting bit. He doesn't know who did it. The guy disappeared, and then White Rabbit showed up. And then there's that little bit where he says, I'm just a regular guy. I get shaken down by these villains, meaning, Kareem and White Rabbit. And I always wonder when you're going to come and save me. When they do that, you never do because you don't care about that stuff. But now here you are to kill me because I'm a vampire. And that's where Peter's like, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. And all of a sudden the stake comes through like Doctor Strange at the end of Blood Hunt #1. And the guy kind of in a cool.
Yeah, he just like dissipates, into dust.
And it's kind of funny as it goes. Yeah, it's awful. And then as it goes, you see it's Kareem behind him some of the better art I've seen with Kareem. I mean, he looks pretty cool and says, "Hey, nice work, Spidey." And Spider-Man's like, I didn't want to do that. He was just, sorry, Playboy. I don't even know what he said. He's like,
sorry, Playboy.
We're
I was running out of time.
And he's just like, we have to go, and White Rabbit should be fine now. And also, this is where you realize that Kareem had the ulterior motive. He was turned into a vampire by White Rabbit.
You see his neck there where it's dissipating from
it's
the bite?
dissipating off. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have Spider-Man get mad, said this guy could have been saved. You did this, and I'm going to turn you in. Kareem says, what are you, for a pile? It is true. It's a vampire apocalypse. Who is going to be arrested for killing a vampire? Nobody. So he's kind of laughing, and Peter gets frustrated. But that's when White Rabbit just comes in. No mention of how she got out of that storage facility. She walks in, and that's where Peter goes out and sees the vampire apocalypse in a different light. He's got to help. You got to separate some of these vampires from people, save the people who aren't vampires, but maybe figure out a way to, make things right.
So you're saying if you just got turned into a vampire, all your rights as a citizen are waived?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I'm trying to think of if it
that's
was
really messed up.
Here's the thing. If I ended up, I guess rabies. I don't know what you can say, because I think at one point I did read that the idea of being a vampire could have been from when people would get rabies and they go like they're crazy, right? Yeah. So if I had rabies and I was trying to eat you and you killed me, I don't think you're going to be in jail. I think that it's self-defense. Now, that the guy was chained up to a deal, but in Jim's world, vampires, no, they're not. They don't get.
They waive their rights.
Yeah,
they're done.
Rights are waived. whether you have decided to chain yourself up to a radiator or not, you can be killed with no sort of problems. Is what I say. Now, later on, we're going to have even this week with some of the books where we're going to step up the idea of Nazi, or I even said it, of vampires to make them even Nazis. So that's even crazier. Then you can kill them twice, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But when we end this, Peter's like, I'm going to go and figure out something. I'll figure out how to make a serum. Peter does that a lot, right? And as he turns the corner to do this, all of a sudden you get the lizard come out. And he's like, and I also don't want to be eaten by a lizard.
Grrr.
So we'll see. Yeah, and I really was hoping at this point it was vampire lizard. But I believe what will happen here is you'll have Kurt say, like, oh my God, I need you. We got to go figure out how to.
Yeah, well, he'll help him with the cure, but yeah, in the next issue.
We'll see the deal. And he's like, plus, I better run because I think I have the Hulk's pants on. And he's going to want them back. I love those purple pants.
It's back when they use purple for every color.
Yeah, every deal. I love
purple
those.
And green.
But yeah, so that's the end. And again, it's a one shot. And I do think that Zeb Wells he did something. It's very predictable. Some of the dialogue is kind of basic, kind of eye rolling. And the whole idea, it's like an after school special of, now I realize the vampires are real people and I'm going to save them. But compared to the bull crap that we've gotten over and over, especially if you would say the thing that would be the most like this would be, say, a dark web that Zeb Wells did himself, and that was garbage. So this actually, I'll give props when props are due. I don't know that this will carry on past this, but this might be one of my favorite issues of Amazing Spider-Man that we've had in quite some time, and I think John Romita Jr. has the best art he's done on the series so far. So what would you give it?
Yeah, I mean, this really should have just been Amazing Spider-Man Blood Hunt #1.
But, because we'll get into that. I'm glad you reminded me. But we'll give this.
I'll go with an 8.
I'm going 8.
It.
Yeah, I liked it. I'm actually surprised. And so what continues here, because we already said Spider-Man has to go to the issue 50, not anything to do with Blood Hunt. So at the end it says, hey, this will continue, or it doesn't even say, it's basically like Spider-Man's adventures, because it's going to be a new thing.
They do a split cover thing.
Yeah, into the Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man Blood Hunt.
With Morbius in it, which can get a little weird, I think.
And it's not done, but now this might be somebody's, oh, good, but it's not. It's not Zeb Wells.
No.
It's not anything to do with this run. It is going to be Justina Ireland. And if you don't know the name, she ended up doing Spider-Verse stuff with Persephone Parker / Star Spider. The spider from Space Station Bronx, you know. But the other thing that me and you were aware of is she did a Sana Staros miniseries while we were doing the Star Wars podcast. So if you want to go back and listen to us talk about it, you won't hear us talk because we read the first issue and it stunk. So we never talked about it.
Yeah,
we both ended up reading it and we're like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that. The funniest thing, though, is this is the best stat for her. She lives with her family in York, PA.
Nice.
The armpit of all armpits and pretty much the scourge of this whole entire run. It made me laugh when I saw that. I'm like, I wouldn't even be shocked if she didn't have something in there where suddenly Peter talks about how great York is just to try to get it back.
Didn't he blow up York or something?
Yeah, he blew it up. That's why it
out?
makes me laugh. Nah, he just kind of fell out of that portal and blew it up and ran. Remember at one point he was on the run and then he wasn't?
Crying and stuff.
Yeah, all upset on that.
Thanks, Paul.
Here. Yeah, Paul. Yeah, so I wonder if she'll mention York, PA. I'll mention it because it's a cesspool. But with all that, we're both 8s. Pretty good. We'll move on to the next issue. And the next book is The Avengers. It is The Avengers number 14. It's written by Jed MacKay, art by C.F. Villa, art by Federico Blee, letters by VC's Corey Petit. And kind of in a weird play, we already did The Amazing Spider-Man, Jed MacKay. We had a one-shot with our Jed MacKay, Zeb Wells. We had a one-shot. But the thing I said was, hey, maybe he can get out of his own way, have some fun with this, not worry about his own story. Well, Jed MacKay, this is his story, but you almost can say the same thing with this Avengers book where he gets a new team. You kind of have some fun with it, though I expected more from this issue. It is the Avengers, and they got ripped apart in that first issue, A Blood Hunt. So you do have a different team, but in the meantime, in the Blood Hunt book itself, we end up getting, a team, the Blood Coven, right? I don't know anything about these characters, and they're just kind of thrown at you. I'm not saying that we won't learn later what the deal is, but when I get into the Avengers, I don't know about you. I kind of know Cap. I don't know that I need an over-the-top narration to tell me what Cap's all about. I also know a couple of the other characters, but I don't mind having, a page or two giving us, Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, Hercules, Hazmat especially, and Pietro Quicksilver. But this is all through Cap's narration, and it almost feels, and Jed MacKay's writing the Avengers book, right? Usually what I'll say is that in these certain situations, somebody's trying to hey, I'm doing a trial to show you how much I know Cap so I can write Cap. The thing is, he's writing Sam as Sam Wilson Cap. I think that this issue might be him trying to convince people, listen, I don't hate Cap. I just have Sam on the thing, because I've seen people who won't read his Avengers because it's not Steve Rogers Cap. Some people have issues, and everybody's allowed theirs, right?
I don't care about that at all. I like Sam Cap. I just this Captain America is pretty good, a version of him, and I just don't like that Avengers team. I like this one better.
Yeah, I think that the thing is, and it's kind of like the Justice League at DC. Back in the day, you'd have such a rotating, bunch of teams, and some don't work, some work. But the thing is, when you have that, I don't want to say classic, because then people are going to, well, that's not really the classic. But at this point, you have kind of a basic, idea of what the Justice League, and for the most part, the Avengers. But even when you twist and turn it, you're giving different versions of the characters that people want, and it kind of gets stale. But
even Captain Marvel as the leader of the Avengers never felt right to me either. Not to say that she can't be, just how he set it up didn't really work.
Yeah, and so when you get into this, it is kind of fun, especially having Hercules back, and every character they even point out has been an Avenger at one point, because as this attack comes down, you have Steve, desperate, and he knows that the Avengers has had some troubles. I didn't realize Scarlet Witch was taken. I'll admit it. Maybe I'm a dummy.
I didn't know
I
either.
ended up where I was like, okay, well, they tell us. I didn't quite get that, but you end up where Steve he gets on the Avengers hotline and yells, and it's like 1-800-ASSEMBLE. And he yells out, hey, everybody, anybody who gets this call and you were an Avenger, if you're going to get it because of that, meet me here and we're going to assemble and fight these vampires. It's kind of a cool setup, because you can get this wacky team, and it almost plays out, maybe not as much, but the way of well, this isn't the team that I would have wanted, but maybe this is the team that will do the job. And you do get some characters that we haven't seen together like this in a while. So that's kind of cool. For me, the narration for Cap was just real basic. And, he starts off there, superheroes and supervillains. I suppose I'm a hero. I'm like, no, you are. At one point, he even says, when I realize the superhero part of me weeps when I can, I'm like, okay. It just seemed a little over the top. And like I said, basic. And I don't know that I really need, this treatise on what is Cap and how he goes.
Well, there was narration boxes from as every character is introduced in their page or page and a half, they get their own.
Yeah, they get their deal, and you get to play. And I like Hercules. I like all the characters. I like Hazmat. I know a lot of people don't. I don't mind her, and I like her in this. Where people even told me they were afraid because it's the Avengers that you get the Hazmat that we had recently. Well, we do, but more of the Kelly Thompson, Captain Marvel Hazmat deal of her. Oh, she mentions it in passing. I hung out with Captain Marvel, but she does her own thing and actually uses her power in a cool way.
Mm-hmm.
But really all this team is doing, and I expected more from this book. I'm going to say I'm expecting more from the Jed MacKay tie-ins overall because it's his story. And this ends up being at one point kind of just a fun little romp, right? You have Hercules.
That's all it is, yeah.
Like, over the top action guy who kind of doesn't get things but is smarter than you might think. You get Pietro, everybody's kind of their generic version of themselves. Like Pietro's just pissed. When he comes in, it's funny because he accepts the call, but then immediately starts bitching that they're not doing enough to get his sister. I'm like, what are you doing then? But it ends up working out. The thing, though, where you really go, and there's not too much meat to it yet. We'll see how it goes. They're fighting vampires. But when they end up deciding, okay, there's this place, and they mention that, quote unquote, they're dressed the same. These vampires, they have these weird uniforms on, and they're gathering up people and rounding them up into things. And at one point, the talk is like, why would they round things up? I go, I think it might be about the blood. And Hercules is like, yeah, I guess it would be about the blood. It's kind of funny. But Pietro goes ahead, and you end up having, and again, very basic because Cap's there. But I'm now thinking because of Magneto and things, this should hit more with him as well.
Yeah, because he wouldn't like Nazis at all.
No, and that's the thing. They're Nazi
Even
vampires.
though I don't ever hear him dealing with that.
No,
I always hear Magneto.
Now that I see when he gets there and he ends up saying, I want, dressed like that, I want you to be afraid of me. Like, maybe you could have went a little more into that. But when you get to this part, you're fighting vampires, right? It's a vampire apocalypse. Oh, wait a minute. Steve's in here? Oh, we have to have Nazis. You don't have to have Nazis.
No, you do not.
I mean, why is it that this team just gets funneled towards the vampire Nazis? And so they're talking, and I do think it was Hazmat, one of the funniest lines where they're debating if they get bit, are they going to become both vampires and Nazis? It was kind of funny. That. But again, this was pretty basic. It's a very basic thing when I expected a little bit more hard-hitting because of the idea that it's a Jed MacKay tie-in. But I guess this is just, hey, let's have fun with this team. It's not bad.
Make some introductions, you get the
introductions, but that's half the book.
Yeah.
We talked about that, so, that makes it feel very quick and padded. But you do get some good action. Steve mentions, and we said we're not going to go too much into this because I'm not aware if something else happened recently. But the way that Jed MacKay plays it, where Cap says about his shield, and you have Pietro say, what's wrong with your shield? It's not flying right. I didn't get that either. He throws it and pretty much knocks him.
Yeah, how would you know? You wouldn't know unless Pietro said that.
I thought maybe he'd throw it and then he'd have to go run and pick it up. Like it didn't zip back to him. But he says, what's wrong with your shield? And he says, this isn't my usual one. It's not as well made, so it doesn't fly quite as true, but I'm getting used to it. It's edged in silver. I had it made after I was turned into a werewolf. I think that you're right, but it should have been spelled out that this is something that he had. Like, I had this made 80 years ago. Like, it almost feels like it's saying that recently he got it because of the deal, because it's just sitting around. He's never used it. He's saying he's getting used to it. It's a weird.
I think he had it in his arsenal and just pulled it out.
And we just had the Stephanie Phillips Capwolf book.
Yeah.
And I was worried that there's Jed MacKay, and he's like, oh, he was Capwolf recently, not realizing that was back in World War II. But he made the shield and just put it away and never used it because he's saying, I'm just getting used to it. It's a weird play
well, actually,
there, but
now you think about it, it'd actually be pretty cool maybe if he actually turned into Catwolf.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
The vampires.
And actually, when that ended, there was it was kind of ambiguous.
Well, because they said he's always going to have it in him. They said
that would be awesome. Now, my score went down because he's not turning into Catwolf. It'd be so awesome. Then we get Twilight crap going on.
Why not make him just turn in whatever he wants?
Right,
Yeah.
your Team Blade, they're all sexy. Doing things. Yeah. That'd be awesome. And of course, Steve would have those abs that Taylor Lautner had. Nobody make fun of me, but I remember it was Taylor Lautner. But you end up with
he was the werewolf.
he with that long hair, he never looked
and
right.
he hasn't done anything since.
No, he didn't. He was in Shark Boy Lava Girl before that. I like Taylor Lautner. But you end up, I love in that deal when he says, maybe, I'm telling you, it's a weird play that is spelled out here. Maybe we'll get it because indeed the idea that silver is not anything you do with vampires.
Not
really,
typically, no.
Right? So
no.
why would he? I think he might turn into the Catwolf. If he turns into Catwolf, I'm in. I'll give it a 10, and I don't even care if the book is good or not. A Catwolf would be awesome. Oh man, we get a bunch of the Howling Commandos come out too. Be awesome. They get their dumb and all them jerks. But you end up where they're attacking Nazi vampires. So if that's not enough. The idea in this is normally you'd expect the Red Skull to show up, but I think that's way too big and ridiculous. So he ends up where they're doing things. Even Hazmat gets thrown by Hercules. They're doing, all the specials and things like that. And they're just taking down Nazis, which is fine. And then you end up getting a helicarrier and they even say, what's with this helicarrier? Why would that be? And they end up getting pulled up into a vortex beam. And when they get on there, there's all the people that were there. And at one point, you would have Hazmat say, I'm going to bring this sucker down. Even Hercules is like, I don't think that's a good idea. It'll crash then and everybody will die here. But it's Baron Blood looking like he's a vampire at the end. I'm like, all right.
Well, who does Baron Blood remind you of recently at DC?
Yeah, who do you think?
The Black Label Batman.
Oh, yeah, he does. I actually, I'm telling you, I'm an idiot. I thought it was Clint. I thought Clint Barton, I'm like, with the old crazy costume, I thought that he was pissed and did, but then it's like, I'm Baron Blood. So I'm like, yeah, it does look like the Batman.
Yeah, the Batman.
Looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
The art's really good.
I guess the Nazis changed their logo a bit. I don't know. They upgraded it.
I think that the problem is, and it's one of those, even us talking about it when we go the videos, you never know. They could get taken down just because you say it. And the idea, if you do put the symbol fully, you're going to end up where there's certain countries, say, Jeff, you can't have it's going to cause trouble. So they're using the SS symbol, kind of, and the lightning bolt of it to then go to make it. And I kept looking at it like one of those paintings in the mall where I thought that I was going to go and I was going to actually see a vampire face in the black to the white. I didn't see shit. Is what I saw. I ended up okay, whatever. I thought it could have been clever to make it something that you see it's there and not.
No, but the lightning bolt and the SS works, I guess.
Yeah.
They rebranded.
Yeah, they're vampire Nazis now. I do also where when you are in this point in the Marvel universe, even Nazis look down on the mutants. They're talking crap on Pietro, you mutants are the worst. You're worse than us. You guys are awful. I agree. Krakoa era is ending very bloody. But at the end you get so my score is actually not bad. Now that we talked about it, it's actually very fun. It's not integral. If you think because Jed MacKay's writing it and it's the Avengers book, you need to read it. You don't. But the hopes and dreams of getting Catwolf are there. And also it's a fun team. And I think that Jed MacKay's just having fun here. And so it's pretty cool. And like I said, the art is really, really good. But it's still very generic that you end up wherever Cap goes, Nazis are soon to follow. It's like we said at one point, if Spider-Woman was in this, it'd be Hydra. I mean, that's all you get. It doesn't matter if there's one Nazi or one Hydra agent left. They will show up in that book. So we'll see how it goes. But what would you give it?
I'd give this one 7.5.
I'm going 7.8.
Oh,
I
wow.
almost want to give it an 8.
Yeah, I mean, it's teetering on the edge.
It's just so basic, and it spends way too much time introducing characters that most people should and probably do know. But after that, it's it's kind of fun, and you could do a lot in tie-ins. You could be, but the least you can do is be fun, and that's what he's doing. And I don't mind that.
You know what? I'll give it an 8. You know why? Because it has been way better than the others. It makes me want to read it again.
I'm going 8 as well.
It makes me want to read the Avengers again.
Here's the thing. What I'm thinking is he better watch his P's and Q's. Because we're going to like this book so much that when they get back to the regular team, we're going to bail again. We're going to be like, because this is just kind of fun. But it almost gives you that idea, like I said about Zeb Wells in our Amazing Spider-Man review, when you kind of are just like, there's nothing to prove. You can't really fail because most people expect these to be kind of lame. So all the pressure's off. And I think that if you just want to have fun, and you even said before we even talked about the X-Men, why everybody likes X-Men 97. Well, it's a classic deal. People, I think, will like it because it's Steve Rogers' Cap. And he said, not saying anything about Sam, not doing anything with that, because even on this team, we end up getting Kate Bishop that some people would say, oh, I want Clint. But it's just a cool issue and fun. And Cap leading this ragtag team is pretty cool.
Well, Cap hasn't been on the Avengers in a while, proper Cap. And then he's been in a bunch of nonsense solos things.
The funny thing is, written by, well, the one going now, some people like, I find it boring. But
it's kind of boring. It's better than what we were getting.
Before that, with Lansing and Kelly, that was garbage. And most people who have jumped on Cap, at least the Michael, who was writing it, I can't remember. J. Michael Straczynski. He doesn't seem embarrassed to be writing Cap. I said this about a bunch of other characters, too. Some of these people who jumped on the Cap books seem to be embarrassed to be writing Steve Rogers because of him being, Captain America and what that means, instead of just going with it and having fun. And that's what they're doing here. So the last thing I really remember of me reading Cap in the Avengers, I know I read past it, but was when he was jogging around that stupid Avengers Mountain Sentinel. And he was like running through the intestines, talking about nonsense. Jason Aaron, bullcrap. This is a weird, very, very positive bunch of books we're going through now. I don't get it, but we're going to move on to the next one. Hopefully, the light train continues. And the next book is Doctor Strange, number 15, written by Jed MacKay, art by Pasquale Ferry. Colors by Heather Moore and letters by VC's Corey Petit. And we just ended up reviewing the Avengers book. And we talked about the idea that Jed MacKay book should be a little bit bigger and tighter. He's the one who's writing the main story, so he knows everything about it. The Avengers books seem to be more just for fun and maybe have Cap fight Nazis, as he does. But in this book, this to me is the most important book this week. That if you're reading Blood Hunt, I think that this is, I hate to say, must read. I kind of think it is a must read. I think that this is one that most people should go, because the story that's going to continue through into Blood Hunt 2 is definitely going to be coming from this, because at the end of Blood Hunt 1, we end up seeing Doctor Strange get run through by Blade, and we get to see that again here and then see what is going on and what is happening with Blade and Doctor Strange. Now, I will say, me and you were goofing on it before we recorded. The idea, if you read the Red Band deal, that Red Band number 1 of Blood Hunt, maybe forget about that cliffhanger that was so over the top, because this Doctor Strange in this is just going to be cut in half.
He's messed up pretty bad, but he's not cut in half.
Just as a deal, he's a vampire, but he's not quite cut in half. That was kind of crazy, and that was just for that. You almost play off that that's the director's cut. That is the extra red.
I mean, it looked cool, I guess.
Yeah, it looked crazy. It was really cool. But here we go in that. And one thing that I think that Jed MacKay, he's not great at explaining things. He's not great at setting things up. And some things in this book, and it's funny to say, hey, everybody who is reading Doctor Strange, one of the things at the end is set up in the Doctor Strange book, but I do think a lot of people are reading this who haven't been reading the main series or had dropped the main series, because at one point, and if you want to check, go back, it's a couple issues back, where the book seemed to be canceled. Me and you thought that it wasn't coming back till June. Remember, we were doing
that was back in December. That would have been.
And after that, we've had little adventures. You had Clea's young sister in an Adventures in Babysitting story. Then we ended up having a deal with Victor Strange, Doctor Strange's vampire brother who was working his way out of the Darkhold Mirror. That comes into play. But we also ended up having Doctor Strange in the world of role-playing games, doing nonsense that at the end of that, they end up getting the body of General Strange, which was one of the bigger stories in this. It's a future alternate version of Doctor Strange, and they put him in this game. I think he'll come to play by the end of this. But in the meantime...
So you're saying you could have skipped all that stuff and just picked up right here?
I mean, you could have just maybe had like a little bit of setup here, but Blade is afraid that Clea and Steven are going to do this Montesi formula. But if Blade makes one of them, this being Doctor Strange, he ended up doing a vampire, then Clea won't be able to do it, because if she does it, then Doctor Strange dies. Yep. So it kind of is that
you can't do the Montesi formula.
Yeah, but that's all this is about. But you do get, some other things involved in some crazy stuff. Again, he turns Doctor Strange into a vampire. Kind of cool, I guess, right? And he's talking a lot of crap and basically says, I can do whatever I want. I'm running the vampire. Seems like he's really spelling out that he set this up. Now, is this Blade talking, or is it somebody possessing him, talking about the idea of setting it up for so long, and even calls that blood coven like my children, things like that, very odd. And then ends up pretty much just fighting Clea. And they're going back and forth, and Clea shows that she's pretty badass. But some of the things in this, and I had a theory before that I told you, but some of the things that end up being talked about with Blade with the red eyes, that is the tell, where he says, my scheme spanned epochs, Clea, an end in the making for thousands of years. And then starts talking about Atlantean swords that he has. Starts talking about the Sorcerer Supreme, says he's a warlord born. And I had said before that I think that what is going to be revealed by the end is that this big bad would be Varney, the original vampire in the Marvel Universe, who, after this, I'm almost positive. The idea, because Varney, when he ended up, and one of the big issues, if you want to go back, it's the Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme number 18 in the 90s by Roy and Danny Thomas. Roy Thomas wrote it. It ends up having Varney, who wanted to be a Sorcerer Supreme at one point, deals a lot with the Darkhold. He's a devotee of the Darkhold. Also ended up fighting King Kull of Atlantis a bunch of times with a bunch of these swords, and was, the one who...
I'm looking at it. He's a big monstrosity. Isn't he, this guy?
So I think that the big play is that Varney knows he looks terrible. So he's possessing Blade. And the idea of Blade, if you're not aware, these are all the things that they were set up, but in books that a lot of people aren't reading. In the Blade book, Blade ended up going and taking and drinking Dracula's blood and getting Dracula's powers. And I think that was the way that now he could be maybe controlled more by this Varney, because Varney, through one step, he turned a lady, the lady turned Dracula. That's how close
he looks like
Dracula
one of those
was.
the Muppets from the Labyrinth movie.
Yeah, he does. So we'll have to see. Again, wouldn't it be a crazy deal at one point where Blade just kind of like rips apart and this nonsense comes out? But if I look like that guy, I might want to be Blade.
Oh, yeah. Wesley Snipes,
And
good.
in this, just to say, you're even having at the end of this an idea of kind of taking over bodies and vampires and stuff like that as well. But in that, you end up where, again, Clea is fighting off Blade. Blade thinks he's won. Haha, you can't do anything. You're going to have to deal with. And also just the idea that not just because Steven is a vampire, but because you're going to have to deal with him being a vampire as well. You're going to be caught up in all that nonsense. So what ends, Blade leaves, and he ends up saying to the Blood Coven, beam me up. Blood Coven goes. And then Clea immediately realizes what she has to do and separates the body of Doctor Strange with his spirit. So he can end up being regular Doctor Strange while vampire body is just there without the soul. Kind of a weird play.
I'm not sure that checks out, but I'll go with it. Yeah.
I know. But it ends up, the weird thing of it is, again, Jed McKay just killed Doctor Strange.
Yeah, we don't need him dead again.
Things like this. So it is a cool thing. I think that the better play would have been Clea. But he even says, and I think that it's Jed McKay trying to figure out, because even Blade says, I'm not sure if I can turn a Faltine. She is different, the whole deal of her thing going on. But maybe that would have been a little bit better because of what we just had.
I think it'd be
recently
fun.
had with Doctor Strange. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it would be funny if Clea was like, I can't take this anymore. I'm not doing this again, and just chops his head
just
off.
leaves.
Just chops Doctor Strange's head off.
Somehow it's just done.
Yeah.
Runs him through with a stake.
Who wants to
You're done,
deal
baby.
with that? You know?
Or no, she just ends up like, now I really want to get this whole spell. Starts doing that nonsense. The Montesi formula, indeed. But it'd be funny, too, now General Strange isn't out that he's in that game, but just think if he's like just walking through the maze, like got cookies and milk. Blade comes in and thinks it's him and turns him into a vampire. Probably have a better life. That doesn't have much to do. But leaves Clea to, like we said, makes the spirit. So now we get Doctor Strange spirit and a vampire body that doesn't have him inside it. And in the meantime, then, the Midnight Mission, they decide to come knocking with Miles, and Doctor Strange like zips out again. It's so funny. You know that you're a screwed up character when you zip out as your astral self, and they barely bat an eye. They're scared because
normal Doctor Strange stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is a Tuesday for him. Even if you go in and say, "Oh, get this, my body was turned into a vampire. I'm my astral self," and they'll be like, "Okay, that's normal stuff."
That's how he answers the door because he's lazy. He doesn't want to walk.
Yeah, but only not just walk. He doesn't want to turn the knob and open it. He just comes. This is what he does to make all the kids crap their pants on Halloween. He comes out, and then to make up, he gives full bars, I'm sure. But he ends up where he invites them in. So you got the Midnight Mission. I like where you have Hunter's Moon and Tiger just like, and you have Miles like, yeah, I get it. They go in. The thing, though, is, and just to go with it, I don't know what exactly Miles is doing.
What does he have in his finger?
I don't know. But remember, in Blood Hunt #1, again, a scene that went by very quick. Blade went to Miles and said, "You're the only one I would come to do this. I need your help." And then just kind of that scene ended, and then Blade went completely bad. So I don't know if this is what...
Why else would Miles be here?
Yeah,
you know?
I think that, and he's doing...
So he's like a double agent or something?
Or it's Blade be like saying, "I'm possessed and you have to do this for me." And hell, I don't know. I don't know which play it was. Remember when, and it was the scene where people were, if they hadn't been reading Miles lately, they're like, "Why does he have a lightsaber?" Because he had his stupid sword. But while all this is going on and hey, we got to get together, we got to team up, we got to do this, that, and the other thing, we got to figure out how we can stop this, you end up where Victor Strange, and if you haven't been reading this book, it just like pops in where he's like, "Me, Victor Strange, a ghost, a mind without a body, and look, a body without a mind," and he looks over and looks at what, then once Stephen leaves his body, his version becomes like a very classic Morbius looking.
Yeah, I don't like it. The nose.
I don't either. No, and he's like,
it must be dire straits for this Victor Strange if he wants to get into that monstrosity of a body.
I mean, the guy was in that mirror for so long, and if you don't know, again, that was that quick story with Bats. Bats is in the mirror now, and it kind of switches
the places. It's not so bad. Nobody bothers you in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Bats is just a ghost dog anyway. Yeah. He's just going around pooping ghost poops or something. that means you wipe and it's not there. We were talking about that earlier. But yeah, so that is like the idea that we had that issue and somebody's going to say, "Oh man, but that really set it up." And it was, I'm like, no, it's just Victor Strange. He's going to get in the body so he could cause trouble looking like a vampire Doctor Strange. But even then, it's not like the classic of, oh no, people will think that he's a vampire anyway. So if vampire Stephen Strange was going around doing stuff, nobody's going to think anything of it and will try to stop him anyway. And I think my whole theory of that is that they'll end up having to, and they even almost spell out that they might not be able to get back into that body, but if Victor goes in, they end up killing him there. Oh no, Stephen Strange doesn't have a body. That's when General Strange comes walking through with his milk and cookies. And boom, they have a body and we get rid of General. Because General Strange, you even said, it's weird having him in the Sanctum Sanctorum just walking around.
He's redundant.
Like, there's nothing to do with him. And he is a guy who had like severe PTSD and was bad at points and whatever. Kind of a loose end.
Maybe the brains merge and they just share the same body or something.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it is him. It's him in an alternate future deal.
That's definitely happening.
Yeah, so when they get in, it'll be like we'll absorb, and I'll have your memories of that bad future. I'll have to work through them. Now I think it really will happen. We may even have like issues because remember it's Jed McKay going to go to Dr. Sternum from that Moon Knight, and they're going to have therapy sessions.
Oh no, we'll skip that
now. Next thing you know, it's 8-Ball. He's gotten a degree from the University of Phoenix. He's doing the therapy. But what would you give this?
This one I'd go 7.5 for.
I think I'm 7.5.
It's not going to quite get an 8 for me, but
still pretty good though. I mean, just to point out, we like these tie-ins more than we like that first issue. But to explain it even a little more, you expect more from the main issue of an event and the number one issue. But so far, not going to say that you have to buy every one. I mean, really, at the end of this, you don't really need to buy this. I think anything that we get will be brought up anyway, hopefully in the main book, or you can just listen to us. But this isn't bad because you get the Blade stuff and you get a setup. And
it's
things
early
like
in
that,
the event. What are we going to be saying 3 months from now? I mean, I like vampires. I realize I like vampires as a genre. I kind of do, but like it's going to get old after a while.
Yeah, just... people want to see, go and listen to us talk about the Dark Droids. That made us quit the Star Wars podcast. The only reason we're talking about this stuff is because we had enough of the events in the Star Wars deal. Yeah, they killed us. But we have one more book for me and you, and I didn't even mention it earlier. My man Jason is going to join me for a bunch of other books because there's so many damn tie-ins to this event. I didn't even realize at one point where I'm looking tie-in, okay, but I didn't realize Venom and things like that. It's like, oh, God, there's too many. But he's going to join me to talk to some. But me and you have one more book to go. It's a doozy, so we'll be back with that. And this is Deadpool number 2, written by Cody Ziegler. He's a funny guy, that guy. Art by Roger Antonio. Colors by Guru Effects. Letters by VC's Joe Sabino. I had mentioned at the beginning of our podcast, the idea that we're doing this, we weren't going to do it. No. I ended up where we read the first issue. We didn't like it. We ended up talking about why we didn't like it. I think it's our opinion, and everybody else had other opinions. A lot of people did like it. That's fine. But we thought, it's not for us, because we have a funny bone. But the idea of it was this guy gets involved yesterday, I think it was, like really timely on that that first issue, and says that awful review, take the L. I don't even know what it meant. It was barely a sentence. And so I thought, you know what? We're reviewing the next issue because I'm not just going to run away from this. I want to see, and hopefully it's better. The idea, and then I'd say, yeah, maybe, but I still have the same opinion of the first issue. That doesn't change, but hopefully, and maybe this will be better. Spoiler for us, it's not. It's pretty much an unfunny issue that does nothing, and actually even states in the issue that what we set up in the first issue with the villain death grip, we're not going to get to that for a couple issues because, it's fun times here in Cody Zieglerville, and you end up again just having what kind of is random scenes. And I know, again, I don't mind randomness in a Deadpool book. You can have fun. My problem is when you have randomness and it's not that fun. Mm-hmm. It's not, usually with Cody Ziegler and the things that I end up reading, and I've never really liked anything of it. And I don't want to feel or say, things that make me feel biased. We didn't come in here just to hate on it because of this one guy. I was hoping it was good. But one of the things that I get with Cody Ziegler is he does like to repeat jokes. He's not even doing that as much in this. It's just randomness where we ended that last issue. Okay, Death Grip, the idea that Deadpool's going to set up kind of a villains for hire, an assassins for hire type deal. He got the idea from Gal in the Miles book. And this, while I was reading this issue, it brought something in my mind that you had said that drove me nuts. And it continues to. This is the Cody Ziegler verse.
Oh, yeah, we're in
this book. If you are reading and like all of Cody Ziegler's book, kind of like we said about the first issue of Blood Hunt, the big event. If you're a Jed McKay fan, you're in the Jed McKay verse, and you're going to really like it because it ties in all of his books. If you are a Cody Ziegler fan, I think you could get some fun out of this because it is tying things. Even a guy from back in the Beyond issues of The Amazing Spider-Man, when Nick Spencer left the book and they ended up having Zeb Wells and a bunch of other writers do that whole Beyond deal, stuff that brought back Ben Reilly and things like that. Mm-hmm. That's so far back, and it's a character. nobody would. It's a non-character and shows up, and you have the editor's note. Well, you're going to go back to see that guy?
No way. He doesn't have a wiki entry or anything. This guy.
Nothing. This
I'm
guy
not wasting
is nothing.
my time looking
He's
back.
nothing. And the thing is,
he doesn't even look like anything. He's just a regular guy. Like
the 4 people who remember this guy, 2 of them are me and Jason, and we made fun of this guy because it was an awful character. It ended up where, if you don't remember, the Cody Ziegler things in the whole Beyond stuff, it started the Sentient Sandwich. Not like everything was bullcrap. But we end up going to this. Like, I don't want to get too angry. But this issue, like, it's one of those things. It's not horribly written. Like, the dialogue, it gets a little street. He's trying to throw some things in there, but that's kind of his way. But the idea of this is that it's just boring. It's just kind of middle of the road, mid thing. And I don't expect that from a Deadpool book. Yeah, a Deadpool story doesn't have to wow you. Sometimes it could in a way. But you kind of want to have fun with it. You kind of want to see some crazy stuff. And in this, it's just like the same thing with Princess eating people. You end up where bombs are exploding. Even at the beginning of this, they just end up in a random, thing. They're in Eastern Europe. Like, everything's
He's
generic.
looking for an office building for some reason, too.
And he's doing a job and ends up getting this coat. And at the end, it's just so that he can get some more money. I don't know. Again, I don't know.
It was like on fire and ripped up.
And he's got blood on it. He's like, I got the thing,
blood on
but
it,
there's a coat that's got blood on it.
And he takes the coat with him. You're right.
Yeah, that's what it seems to be. So he's there doing this to get money to get this building that he wants to rent out. But nothing's really well set up. And then he blows up the place as he's leaving. It's a cold open. But nothing really in that.
So when
happens.
they find the rat in the jar, is that the same building in Eastern Europe? Is that
no,
it's a different place?
That's in like New York or wherever they are.
So there was no.
Rent a place.
They didn't let you know there was a change of scenery or anything.
No, I guess he's like, we're going back and we're going to get a. He said that we can now get officially liquid enough to afford rent on a low tier office building in a bad neighborhood, and then just walks away and blows up the building. But you don't even see the explosion. He just throws down this bomb. I don't know. This is what I'm saying. The idea that we didn't like the first issue was a lot to do with it just felt bland, and there might be jokes. Maybe we're just not getting them. I don't know.
It's the same thing with the Miles. There's a lot of stuff going on the page, and it kind of gets lost what's actually happening.
Then we go off, and we're going to deal with Ellie. Ellie, Deadpool's daughter. This is not a new thing, but the way that in my mind, it's been a bit. And he's also, you're going to have Cody Ziegler do a lot. I mean, we didn't even mention, but we will now. The old symbiote dog princess is from Alyssa Wong's run. And it feels like Cody Ziegler is, I give him credit. He's trying to tie in things, but he's doing it in a way that, I don't know, nothing is really well set up for a new reader. And also, it just doesn't really do much. I like Ellie. And showing Ellie is real smart, that's fine. But you stay in this scene, in my mind, a little too long, especially because we just start off with a kind of, shrug your shoulders opening with Deadpool and Princess to then go off to see Ellie and adopted family, the old deal of the life body decoy, like all of that stuff going on. Like the joke is, oh no, your hand's on fire. It's not even that funny. Your LMD hand, it's on fire, and they don't grow on trees. And she shakes that off. And then you have a joke where the guy's serving breakfast, and hey, bone apple teeth. We don't laugh at that. I'm like, yeah. That's this
bone apple teeth.
Bone
everybody.
Apple teeth. At some point they'll probably say it down the line. Don't wait too long because this ain't gonna last long. But you end up where the idea of like, okay. And Ellie wants to get a hold of Deadpool, but realizes if she ends up just calling him, she doesn't, even though she just could call and say, it's, me. She says, I don't want to be a damsel in distress. I don't want to annoy him. The one thing that I would say, if you're Ellie, you don't want to come on too strong. Deadpool might not like that, but she's going to figure out a way to track him, to try to track him down. And so she ends up getting the LMD hand from her mom, uses that because that's why you have the one burn. So they show you have an extra and there's one laying. That's it. It's very, pretty much forced in there. And ends up where connecting the cell phone that Deadpool did give her to connect it with the hand to make like a satellite deal that can track Deadpool. And then even says maybe I can even figure out how to, teleport, whatever. That's fine.
She's a super genius now, Riri Williams style.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I like Ellie, and a lot of people do like Ellie. And I do
or Moon
think
Girl.
With this, yeah. I remember Jason lost his mind. Remember when Reed Richards said that Moon Girl was smarter than him? And he was so upset.
Well, I mean, yeah, didn't like
a lot
that.
of people were upset.
Uh-huh.
But I think that in this, if we did stick around, I think that Ellie with Princess, the symbiote, would be great. I think that they would be really good together. Yeah. And it could actually give a deal. I don't know that I want Princess with him all the time because Princess just eats everybody.
Yeah, he doesn't have to do anything.
It just Princess ends up where it just keeps doing stuff for Deadpool, and maybe that would be a way to maybe I'm telling you, I wouldn't even mind. And I don't know why I'm liking this so much. I'm making up things in my head, but even like a backup with Ellie hanging with Princess might be pretty cool.
Because it makes more sense.
Yeah, I think that could work out. So
hopefully he's leading towards that.
I hope. Because again, like you said, it's just every joke with Princess is, and also doing everything by eating people. But then when Princess isn't eating somebody, that's the joke. Princess wants to eat them because they go to this rundown.
Well, before
space.
that, though, Ellie cuts her hand, which gives her basically free license to go after Deadpool because she can't be hurt.
Yeah, and also and actually can hang with Deadpool.
She's basically a superhero now, not a little kid going out.
Kind of a forced way to. You're right. Looking down the idea because you don't want a little girl hanging out.
She has a healing factor, so she'll be fine.
We could discuss how that came about when it doesn't seem like it'd be genetic, but the idea of all this, who knows? But we'll see. So Deadpool sets up this office. He goes in, it's run down, it's a piece of crap. But really, the big joke in this is there's a rat swimming in the water cooler. That's the joke. And I'm not saying everything has to be a joke, but it ends up where I'm waiting for things to at least be funny or fun, and it never really gets there. And so he's a little less depressed, though, than the last issue, so that's cool. But he ends up where he needs help. Now, he can barely afford the office. He doesn't need help. He's Deadpool. He just went to Russia and got the magic coat. He could do things, but Cody Ziegler wants to have a team up and wants to do fun. So he ends up hiring, never could afford it, but he ends up hiring Taskmaster, who also shows up with this Beyond jerk to do the semantics of the analytical stuff with that. So you think, okay, Deadpool with Taskmaster, this might be a lot of fun. Never really gets there. I'm telling you, a lot of people might be getting angry, like that jerk off. You end up talking about, well, it doesn't always have to be funny or whatever, but Cody Ziegler seems to be the king to me of setting up scenarios that seem like they're going to be a lot of fun and never gets to the fun. It's just the setup that is the joke, never takes advantage of anything past that. So you have Taskmaster, again, to sassy, the talk. It could be so much fun. But they kind of just go back and forth on pay. They start that's kind of the jokes in this, and that's where you even have the idea of Deadpool saying, "Yeah, we're not going to go to," because you end up where Taskmaster shows up, and the guy from the Beyond, he got information on Death Grip. That's the big thing. That guy that you fought, he's ends up having this weird idea of he's like a serial killer, but he's like a drug addict that needs a fix. That's just a serial killer. Like somebody who likes killing. I get it. He likes killing, and he had to try to make that more, but it didn't really work for me. The idea
he likes the killing.
Yeah, like the wrong turn. I mean, that's it. There are people who are obsessed. So he ends up. Well, they talk about this idea of this death grip and the idea of how we're going to have to take him down. And then Deadpool just says, well, we won't get to that till like issue 4. Like, okay, like why? Why? So instead, though, they have to keep doing these littler jobs. So they're going to end up protecting an influencer at streaming.
A micro-influencer.
Yeah, micro-influencer. So there's the joke. They're going to a streaming convention. It's like a TikTok convention.
Could there be anything more lame than a streaming convention?
But that's what's fun about it. Like, that's the setup, right? So
people would actually go to it. I'm just saying.
I know. And you have a guy who barely is anything who has hired them as protection, because you do even end up seeing Crossbones here and things like that. But in the meantime, I think that this influencer at the end is the one who also hired Crossbones to come in and start blasting things, because this guy does not need protection. He actually ends up twisting and turning it into that his booth is, I'm here with Deadpool, come and see me, Deadpool and friends. Never plays out, though. You never take advantage of your setup. An idea of a streaming convention, and seriously, Deadpool going to a convention where there's a bunch of people who make money dancing and doing crazy pranks.
They would love it.
What better setup for Deadpool to find out that's a thing and flip out to want to do it? But that's not what happens.
The guy's like just crying at his desk. It's like,
because nobody wants to go see him. And again,
he's not doing anything to make it enticing to come to his booth.
And Cody Ziegler is making the scene, because once we get the setup, oh my God, what is Deadpool going to do here? And Taskmaster, he's a guy who, they have a lot of people who do like sport, like that Dude Perfect or whatever his name is. Like I said, like Taskmaster himself could do a lot of crazy things, but they never do this because they go to this convention. The one joke is, man, there's people who are waiting in line over there for like 30 minutes at least, and nobody wants to wait in line here. That's it. That's the joke.
Yeah, no, I think this could be funny if it was flushed out a little bit more and they had like interaction with the crowd and they were talking to them.
When they're there and they end up realizing this guy's a sad sack, this guy who hired him, and Taskmaster and Deadpool decide to walk around.
It'd be funny to hear him walk around and make commentary on the different things.
And also, where is the person who makes fun of Taskmaster and Deadpool? Because they seem to be in cosplay at a place that isn't doing that. Like, you could even have that simple a joke.
The whole issue could have been that.
You could have where the security comes and says there's a sign, no cosplay, and they try to kick him out. You can have Deadpool go and see that people are making money doing stupid dances, and he tries to get involved. And then Taskmaster, though, he sees things and can do them immediately. Perfect. He's doing that.
He's doing the TikTok dances.
Yeah. If you're going to do it, do
floss,
it. Yeah. He's flossing. He's doing the whip and nay-nay. I don't know what dances they have now. He's doing, Kill This Love.
What's that thing that you showed me that video? The kids were scooting across. They were floating across the air or whatever.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy that they kind of like do that weird floating air thing.
Across.
See?
Yeah.
This could be, again, you play the idea of Deadpool like maybe stuck in the 80s, 90s. He doesn't get.
He's doing the moonwalks.
And I'm not saying that, somebody's going to say, oh, what do you guys think you're funnier than Cody Ziegler? Whatever. Do something, though. I wish I could say that he's doing things. He sets up that you have a lame, streamer who's at a streaming convention and do nothing at all with it. You say, oh man, they're waiting in line for 30 minutes. You don't even see, when you see the whole bit of the whole thing.
It's too zoomed in or something.
Yeah, it's not crowded and there's not that many people there.
And why is there trash all over the place?
Because people are awful.
I mean,
that's what it is, right?
Even a comic book convention would have been funny to like go to New York Comic Con or something with these guys.
Have a guy walk by this booth and look over and say, oh, you're lame. And you see that it's
Your
Rob Liefeld
sucks.
And he has like 80 pouches on his, shorts. Something. Holy moly. Like, you get nothing. Because then they're there. Deadpool's eating. They're talking still about pay. Where how are you going to afford me? Taskmaster's saying he gets triple overtime. He's like, yeah, what about the Friends rate? That's the Friends rate. And then you just end up where people are taking pictures of Princess. They're going to get eaten. But even that's not played out. Like, they should take advantage of that.
Everybody would be watching Princess. It's an abomination walking around.
Yeah, it shouldn't be in there. And so when you get this whole thing, it's like you are dealing with Deadpool who's desperate for money. This is the perfect. But what happens? All of a sudden, oh no, a maniac with a huge gun. Oh no, that even feels weird. And it's Crossbones who comes in. And I swear to God, this is all set up by this guy to just make this sort of wacky thing happen. But we end then, and I don't know. I mean, people look dead. And Crossbones is there and says, you got a bad habit of bringing out the worst in folks. The end. I'm like, really? I don't know. Again, we talked way too long about this garbage. It's a bland issue. It's a generic issue. It's not worse than some things that I've read. It's not better than a lot of things I've read. It's just kind of doing nothing. And that's one thing that I think that I should not leave a Deadpool issue feeling apathetic. That's worse than me hating it or loving it. It's just the worst because it's nothing. It's bland.
It's irritating to me.
This guy, Cody Ziegler's supposed to be Mr. Funny Guy, Rick and Morty. Mm-hmm. Rick and Morty.
I love Rick and Morty.
And I do too. Rick and Morty's, the reputation has really, it's taken a dive. A lot of people, when you mention it now, they try to pretend that they never liked it. Mm-hmm. It was fun. It went a little over.
The last season, they got rid of the main guy, but
still, like, you're here because of that, and I don't know what you're doing. And it's not even like there's some people get on Deadpool and do like want to, okay, I'm not going to make it so over the top. I want to delve into the character things. Like, this is like stuck in between everything. You get Ellie, who I like, but even that just feels like it's there to entice people in. It really isn't doing anything yet. But Ellie with Princess, great. That I hope that happens. But overall, it's just, what'd you get with this issue? It's so bland.
It's boring to me. I was telling you, like, I wasn't joking. I laid down to read these things. I read all 3 issues successfully. I got to this one. I fell asleep 3 times. I couldn't keep my eyes open. And I'm like, this is just boring.
It was at 5 at night. We're not doing this at 2 a.m. like I do some of the stupid things.
It's just boring. I don't know, man. It's for me.
That's the thing. I can't say it enough that, I mean, if people think that this is great or hilarious, that's fine. I think it's just boring. It's just bland. That could change easily. At least, like I said, the dialogue itself, like, it's not funny. It's just doing the same thing over, but I can't say it's awful. And some of the things setting up seem okay. So it could change. But boy, for 2 issues in, I just think it's a boring deal. And I think it's going to end up along with that Alyssa Longding. I don't think this is going to last more than 10 issues. I may be wrong. People can call me out on it, but it feels already like it just doesn't have a spark. And I said to that guy who gave me crap, I said, I'll get back to you on like issue 5 when nobody cares about this book, where one person's reviewing it. Nobody, no user reviews on Comic Roundup, nothing. It'll just kind of like fall into like Alyssa Wong's Captain Marvel right now. You hear anybody talking about that? Like, this is what this book feels like now already in 2 issues. And it's,
like when he said, see you in issue 3 and 4, I'm like, will you? Because I don't know if it might get canceled before then.
Yeah, no, let's not cut it. The weird thing, and I say 10 especially because they did come out this week, Marvel recently, and said that most things will last till 10.
Great, so now we got to deal with 10 crappy issues instead of just 5?
Again.
What kind of edict is that?
This is one of those things, if I bought, I still might be upset, but it doesn't feel like it's like, as bad as some of the things that we read. It's just like I said, it's just kind of boring.
He's competent. He's got all these ideas. He just needs to focus.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he has to
get him some Adderall and sit him down and get him going here.
You can tell. Maybe I took my Adderall a little too late. Again, we're saying that, I would never make fun of somebody about that because I'm right there. Like, no, I need somebody to keep me focused as well.
It's a thing.
And I get, Matt knows, I get crazy ideas like, we'll be, hey, we're going to record here. And next thing I'm sending them 7 songs and an idea for another podcast because I can't help it. That's just things go wacky.
Focus, sir.
Yeah. So I try. And it is one of the things too. It upsets me when I can't because I do feel like I've wasted people like my time. It's a tough deal, but I think that he's in that position, like you said. And I also think that he comes up, the idea of a streaming convention with Deadpool, that should be solid gold, and then seems to get away from the fun of it. And somebody should have been there to say, no, let's, go, you can have crossbones, whatever, but let's have some fun with this. You'll set up.
You have something
it's a
here.
Set piece.
Let's flesh it out a little bit.
Yeah. At the beginning, you have that Russian deal, which really just felt like a lame opener that was too familiar, or too similar, without any info of what we did last issue as well. It just didn't have much flavor to it. So overall, Taskmaster seems like he's just there to be there as well. But what would you give this?
I'll go 4.5 on this one.
Yeah, I'm going 5. And I like the art. The art's good enough.
Yeah, there
didn't bother
some
me.
of the faces were freaking me out a little bit.
You say the faces. I think that the angles are a little off. The family,
I wouldn't be eating breakfast with them, just put it that way.
Now, if somebody's there cooking bacon and burns their hand, I'm not eating it. I'm done, right?
Their faces look like they're melting a little bit or something. So I don't like that either.
Caught on fire too. That's the deal. Like, I'm not sitting there and just like, okay, like pass the. I don't know.
No,
it'd be weird. I wouldn't be eating that. And of course, as it burns, for some reason, it makes it, it makes it look like
plastic
Deadpool
smell.
Ham. It looks like Deadpool
Oh,
ham.
yeah. And then when he's eating that hamburger, it's freaking me out too. Deadpool with that face.
Yeah, but even then, make fun. If you're going to go to make fun of convention food, make fun of the idea of somebody goes by and yells at Deadpool for eating a hamburger. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know this. I don't eat meat, so I could be there like, oh my, no reason I'd like to eat a hamburger. But yeah, I just don't get it. Also, the idea that they have swords, like the things that are there in this convention, you could really point out are weird. Like they have katanas and things in a convention, but play that out. Have they like the casa? I don't know. I can't correct.
It's just misguided a little bit. It needs some be reined in a little bit.
Yeah, so maybe that'll happen. Somebody can tell us. I keep saying, so that guy will come back and say bullshit again, and we'll be reviewing it again. But yeah, that's for that guy. So yeah, I'd love to. And again, if somebody comes into the comments on YouTube, especially, and you say, "Oh, that's a bullshit," like, give me your review then. Don't just say that's bullshit. Give me the reasons and let me know what we missed out on. Yeah. Why do you think that? That never do. And anytime I say, "Oh, what do you mean? What's that?" Never hear from them again. They're like a ghost, one of those poops that don't go on the toilet paper. That's what they are, smack asses. But that is it for me and you this week.
All right.
And this Deadpool, we got to stop doing this. It's the longest review we do all the time. It's nonsense. But we're going to go off now. Me and Jason are going to go through a couple more. We're not going to get to all of them because there's way too many, but a couple more of the Blood Hunt tie-ins. I got to get my serious face on now. Yeah, Jason's a little more serious.
He's not messing around.
He doesn't mess around.
No.
He's going to be dropping knowledge bombs all over the place. So I'm going to have to
be prepared.
I'm going to have to dodge them. So that'll be happening. It'll be fun. Sometimes if I get so wacky like this with him, he actually seems to have fun eventually. I got to loosen him up a bit. So we'll do that. But we'll be back with me and Jason in just a moment. And I'm here with Jason. What up, Jason?
Hey, Jim, it is good to be on the podcast. And
yes,
thank you for bringing me on for this podcast that we are putting out in the spookiest month of the year.
It is.
Which is May.
Yeah, all these spooky months. It just seems when the weather gets warmer, the spooky months
that's when the ghouls come out to play. Yeah.
Very odd. I thought the freaks come out at night at different times, but these are the ghouls come out to play. And you are joining me. And it's funny because there's a weird twist here of you joining me on a couple of these
bit of synchronicity, in fact.
Yeah, very fun.
As Andy Summers might say.
I was going to say he would. Don't let Sting say that, then you get, everybody else pissed off. So you end up where Blood Hunters has Mark Russell, a story. And I'm like, okay. And you even laughed because I ended up, hey, we're going to do Blood Hunters. And you're Mark Russell, thanks.
No. First, did you want to do Blood Hunters? I'm like, sure, fine, whatever. I didn't even know what it was. Turns out to be an anthology. Mark Russell's in it. And Jim, as you know, I have a medical allergy to Mark Russell's sense of humor. I have a bracelet on my wrist with a little picture of Snagglepuss on the back.
It does have that. And I was just going to say, if you do pass out, it says, do not resuscitate. You just want to be done.
Wow.
You're done. You don't even want to come back.
I was going to say, I have my EpiPen standing right by. I can give myself that
I'm going to
Pulp
grab
Fiction
that
downward stabbing motion.
That would be crazy. Well, you know what? I think that I may be coming down with that allergy as well because we're not big Mark Russell fans. And it's funny, too, because I'll say, me and you at points have a similar sense of humor, but you're more open, I think, to different you like Peter Parkar, for crying out loud. So,
that's a hell of a joke, Jim. That is a damn good joke. Peter Parked Car.
At some point, I would have even said, not that you would love Mark, but you would be more open to his humor. And I don't know that many people are. I really don't.
A sense of humor is a very particular thing. And if somebody's sense of humor doesn't work for you, it just never is going to work.
It's not going to work. I mean, you both.
Just ask my kids.
Don't love it. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Trying for 17 years.
When we get into this Blood Hunters, you do have a story by Mark Russell, you have a story by Christos Gage, and a story by Erica Schultz. And 2 out of 3 ain't bad, is what Meatloaf sang. But even then, when you get into this, you never know what you're going to get in these things. And I'll tell you, this week, with the start of the tie-ins, the stuff I've already recorded here with Matt, it was kind of like some of these are a little bit, at least they're fun. Not saying they're a joke. There's a difference between being fun and being a joke. And I don't mind having fun. But when you're in an event that even the cover of this is just characters soaked in blood,
it's so early. I'm trying to get a feel for what the tone of this is, right? And it looks like the art is very much dark and gritty and blood and death. And then you get some throwaway stories that are just kind of, we're just making jokes here. And it's, what's going on? I don't know how to feel about the whole thing.
And I saw a lot of people when I do that, books I'm anticipating thing every week on our YouTube channel. And a lot of people did mention that they wanted to get this book. Just, I'm guessing from the characters, the cover, and maybe they thought, okay, this is where there's going to be some really cool action. There's going to be some blood and gore, whatever it is. It's a yuckity-yuck book, especially the Mark Russell story that starts. He can't get out of his own way.
So just to set up for people what this book is, it is Blood Hunters. It's going to be 4 issues, I believe, and it's an anthology book. So there's that one story that's going to run through all 4 issues. That's the Erica Schultz story, which starting off with Dagger and like gathering a team of lady superheroes, it seems, and that's going part 1 through part 4. But everything else looks like it's just going to be one shot featuring any hero who's not part of any of the main books. They get their chance to kill some vampires.
Yeah, and you said before we started, like, really this is hey, let's peek in and see our favorite characters kill a couple of vampires. It's really, there's not much else to it. Yeah, and in that's what's going on. You're in New York. Now, one of the things and we'll start off, The City That Never Sleeps, Mark Russell, with Bob Quinn. And that is the tie-in. Today it was announced that they'll be the creative team on X Factor. Kind of crazy that they're doing this together. And I've even said already to some people, you can check it out.
Little trial run or a little practice. Here's how I write my scripts. How do you like to do your panels? Probably that kind of thing.
I'm not going to say that they work great together or not work. I can't tell. It seems fine. But it's Mark Russell.
I'm curious how Mark Russell's going to do on an ongoing, like a plot-heavy kind of a book like I expect X Factor to be. Like, Mark Russell doesn't really do... I mean, he did some of those indie stuff, the Snagglepuss and the Flintstones, but even those didn't have, like, plot points and reveals and intrigue and working with complex, other things going on in the background. He's the character guy, he's the joke guy. Maybe he has this other skill of writing interesting plots and twists and turns, but we haven't seen him do it yet. At least I haven't.
No, and from that announcement, it's like a lot of, like, it's going to be some social media stuff. Like, it seems like it might be...
the teams working for the government. Like, there's these other mutant teams are out there being loose cannons, so the government has to make their own team. And, we've seen things before where the government runs a superhero team in various ways, and it never goes very well, it seems. At least not in modern times since the 70s or so.
The one other thing that I'll point out before we get into this is that Mark Russell really doesn't do a lot of ongoings either. A lot of his things, maybe they start out as that, but they don't last too long. But most of his stuff seems to be miniseries and maybe maxi series, even as indie stuff. So I wonder how that's going to play out as well.
Did they officially say that X Factor is an ongoing? It's always been an ongoing, but they never say that. But when you say that title, I think, well, that must be an ongoing, right?
I'm guessing that it's going to be like 10 issues is what I think. I don't know. Again, it could be lightning in a bottle and everybody will love it and say, hey, we need to get them on, the intranets and the TikToks. I don't know how they're going to play it.
Ruben and I will give the first issue a shot, and over there on the Weird Dose of X podcast, and we'll see what happens. And
that was my favorite thing about that announcement. I'm like, I don't have to deal with it, and you will. But again, I want to check it out, and I will check it out. But again, if you are listening, I know we're doing a lot of talk that isn't this, but still, there's a lot of setup because I want to tell everybody that if you do want to, if Mark Russell may not be as familiar to Marvel readers as, say, DC readers and things like that, if you want to get a peek at what he does, I think this issue kind of gives you a good peek because he is yuckity yuck.
Good point.
It seems as if he doesn't want to take anything serious. He can't get out of his own way. And he always finds something that he's going to end up like, ooh, watch out, New York City. Here I come. And I'm like, come on. Like, it ended up being weird.
This story it's a Hawkeye story. And it apparently at least branches off from the Black Widow and a Hawkeye book coming out right now by Stephanie Phillips. Are you reading that at all?
Yes, I am. And the weird part where he plays, I know. this almost is the, hey, I'm on the run, so I'm getting away from Marjapur that's in that, and hiding out in New York. Well, then I'll go back to Marjapur. It's so forced to get him there, but I like Hawkeye.
The idea is that he's suspected of killing an ambassador?
Yeah, an UN ambassador. That was the first issue. And he did admit to doing it. At this point, you're kind of figuring out why and all the ins and outs. Now, in the meantime, if you're going to do this, first off, maybe get Stephanie Phillips to do it, since she is doing the Black Widow Hawkeye. Not my favorite writer, but I don't know that it wouldn't have been so interesting, or maybe a little more, because in that book, while people don't like it, he is dealing and teaming up with Black Widow, who is has a symbiote at the moment. I think maybe that would have been cool to have in this as well.
As goofy in that series as he's been kind of lately? Ever since that, what was the run that made Hawkeye into kind of the current goofy incarnation?
Oh, you mean like the, what's it called? Yeah, with the Tracksuit Mafia and things like that. Is it Rick Remender? Is that, or Matt Fraction? Matt Fraction's deal. Yeah, and that's been a while now, but yeah, he is that kind of deal now. It's a little more gritty, that other book, but here he's Goof City. I mean, they end up where police end up, hey, like this whole thing's going down. The world is being enveloped in the darkness, and these two cops come in and say, hey, we found him, we have Hawkeye. He's like, no, my name's Brent Mustache.
Yeah, a lot of these books start, it reminds me really of like the when there's that big earthquake in Batman before No Man's Land, where a lot of these stories are just, they're going around their everyday lives, and then the really bad thing happens. It's like right there. So we're seeing the beginning of the event from a lot of different perspectives, which isn't the worst idea ever.
Yeah, the one thing, though, and I guess it might be a way that they just want to play it out. Yeah, it gets dark, but it's not getting too dark. At points, it's not dark at all. But I laugh because in the Venom book, when we do that next, they do even mention, man, this is just like what happened with King in Black. And I'm like, it's exactly. It got enveloped in that whole
they do.
cocoon
we'll
deal.
Get into that a lot.
In this, though, it is going to be Hawkeye who is going to, well, first off, protect these police officers. He is going to talk about his mustache a lot, and then he's going to team up with a puppeteer therapist. I mean, this is the thing. When I say that out loud, I want to smack myself in the face because it annoys me so much. But the interactions, Hawkeye with these other people, it's not horrible. It just doesn't feel like it's doing the event any help by making it so goofy. It's just so goofy and over the top one-liners.
Yeah,
and just
so
nonsense.
There's this puppet therapist. He's got this wooden puppet named Pagliacci. There's this Italian priest with the very over-the-top accent, like he's Father Guido Sarducci. You've got some, I don't know who the lady is. She's got some dust in her purse that she uses to distract the vampire. And, they just kind of put together a little impromptu team of normal people and, kill some vampires. Like the priest blesses an entire rooftop New York City tank full of water into holy water and dumps that, just kind of like Moon Knight, but messier.
Very much so. And you'll get things like, Hawkeye's there and he's going. He's obviously now he's in his full uniform. He's going and the others with him and he shoots a vampire and the vampire has to, rail on the idea that he hasn't seen arrows in a while. And where would you buy arrows? Because arrows are so antiquated. Where would you get arrows? And then he luckily dies.
Yeah.
And then goes and
wooden arrows are basically the same as stakes. So that's handy. It's a good time to be Hawkeye. Like, now my powers are really useful.
Yeah.
You guys laugh at me for being the guy who shoots arrows.
And then you have, oh my God, I got my wooden puppet in my backpack. And you're like, okay, why would you have a puppet? It's just not taking it very seriously, but it's okay. And it goes down and it's really going to keep pushing the idea of New York City, right? That's all it is. New York City, right? And they have
the end, it's like,
gyros.
New Yorkers. Sure, there's more vampires around now. So what big deal? We can deal with anything. We're from New York. Bada bing. Forget about it.
Hey, what up? And you have this one guy. He looks out his window and he's like, hey, the neighborhood hasn't been like this since the 80s. And it's just chaos and murder. And that guy's like a union guy. He goes and joins in. So everybody's just joining in. But it's almost like hey, here's the typical slice of life New Yorkers to fight vampires. And they never even realized how, crazy New York is. And it just kind of is okay. I mean, like I said, it's not ruining anything, but it really gives you that idea of this is where they go to Mark Russell and say, come up with an idea, whether or not they said make it funny or not, but that's kind of what he thinks he is. And that's what we're going to end up getting.
And at the end, it seems like some number of days or weeks have passed and the vampires are still kind of around, which I'm not going to take that as a prediction what happens in the main book because I don't think they're really talking to each other, but that's what this story says.
Yeah, I actually was waiting for that idea because they keep playing. Mark Russell keeps playing the idea like, hey, who knows where the vampires start and the people end? Because, hey, we're all different here in New York. I thought he was going to go so far as to have it like, it's over, but the vampires are hanging, and now they have regular jobs hanging in New York. But it kind of just doesn't. And then at the end, because you have to, it even looks like he has Hawkeye strutting, just like he's in Saturday Night Fever. And he goes and he says to one cop, hey, are you going to arrest me? No, we got rotten gyros to worry about. And then off they go. And I'm like, thanks, Mark Russell. You reminded me why I'm not reading your books ever.
Killing an ambassador, not a big deal anymore.
Doesn't matter. Like, I love that.
Bygones be bygones.
You lose track of the idea that at this point, he's like one of the most wanted men in the entire world. But they have rotten gyros to deal with, and he wants to deal with paperwork, right? So, hey, that's what you get. Forget about it, Jason.
Forget about it.
That's what we needed. Now, we go to the next story, which is a story by Christos Gage. And I actually was kind of looking forward. Earlier in the podcast, we do end up mentioning that Cap, Steve Rogers, in the Avengers book, does mention the time where he was Capwolf. And I said, oh my God, if we get Capwolf fighting the vampires, that would be really cool. Not realizing that we get a Christos Gage and Javier Garrón story where it is John Jameson as the Man-Wolf. And so you have that maybe now. And I really still want Capwolf, but we get Man-Wolf, and I'm like, okay, it's not that much fun. And I like Christos Gage, but this feels like something just mailed in. Like he really didn't have much to do.
Humor piece. I guess it seems like if people are told to do a one-shot where you can't really get into any big plot things, I might as well throw in some jokes.
Yeah, it's very odd.
And at least this has kind of a theme. The theme is the father-son relationship between the Jamesons, where at the beginning they're going to go out to lunch, and Jay Jonah's telling his son, oh, you got to do this to get ahead, you got to do that to get ahead. And I guess John Jameson is currently the warden of Ravencroft?
Yeah, he's one of the guys. I think he's actually just kind of a guard dealing with.
I looked up his history. Yeah, he was just a guard, but I think he's running the place now.
He may. It's weird because we've seen Ravencroft in The Amazing Spider-Man, and it was not. It's like other. It's
they
again. You said
Fisk,
people don't talk.
Fisk gave him the top job, and now that Fisk isn't the mayor anymore, he still has to kind of prove himself.
Because
that's
at one point Norman was there, and then he left, and now they end up because Peter's been going. At one point, you remember that issue that they even got that whole claim with Mary Jane's aunt that seemed weird with the whole Krakoa drugs that seemed off. But so you have that, and even so, like you said, they're not. Nobody seems to be talking anyway, but
and once again, they just go out to lunch. They're having a regular, normal day, and then the big bad thing happens, and vampires attack.
Yeah, and so we have Jay Jonah desperately trying to call Peter Spider-Man, and also he has what he gets credit for later as steaks that he made out of like stool and legs from their table, and he's just going. But the thing is in this. Jay Jonah's losing his freaking mind. Like every panel, he's just screaming and yelling, and it just felt
the most over the top. Jay Jonah,
so over the top, and to me, I don't know if you would agree. This feels like it's out of time. Like this is a Jay Jonah from way back, where he's always just screaming and yelling. It didn't feel right. In fact, when he's yelling at Spider-Man on the phone, I wasn't really getting the idea that he was calling him to be nice, and I thought that's weird because he knows things and whatever. John picks it up and says, you want Spider-Man, you don't want me. In the meantime, he turns into the Man-Wolf, even tells people, like, I'm more man than wolf. That's why I'm not the wolf man. But it is kind of that Twilight kind of deal, even the underworld, the
like a sexy werewolf
versus, sexy werewolf. You got that, like Taylor Lautner. I mentioned that earlier, too. So you end up where all that going on, not much happens, and it ends up, there's some jokes. It's a little more lighthearted.
We get to see them kill some vampires. These vampires look very different than I've seen in any other issues. These are big, leathery winged, almost like the man-bat kind of look to them.
They do, and actually they look almost like, kind of fancy. They look like they could be, but they really don't do much, and they're going on, and you end up where we get some of the rules being played. Obviously, wooden stake, but also religious symbols that they claim, and you end up having that gem. that he has from the other planet. That
they tell people to go to holy ground to be safe, temple, mosque, church, whatever. And also the thing that gives him his power is this gem in his neck. And what's the name of the silly thing?
It's called the Godstone.
The Godstone, yeah. So that's what, implanted it into his neck, and that counts. That's There we go. So that works. And also he's very conveniently immune to being turned into a vampire. So that's nice. Good for him.
It's kind of you get a little bit of the rules, and again, I don't know why he's not now vampire werewolf, but he says that's the rules. He said, I can't be turned. So that's kind of cool. But even by the end, when you do have him admit, I'm kind of upset. You used to think I was great. I was an astronaut. You used to yell about Spider-Man and all these heroes not being real heroes, that I was because I was an astronaut. But now that I'm a lowly worker, whatever it is, at Ravencroft and on the side of Man-Wolf, I'm nothing to you. And he says, no. And the whole thing is, I would rather have Spider-Man get killed than you. It's basically, I'd rather have him on the front lines than you.
Right.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, Dad, come here.
It's kind of nice.
Even by the end, as he's carrying him away, it's just so cartoony and goofy. And then that's when Spider-Man finally calls with the ringtone, I need a hero. And he answers, I don't need you anymore, Spider-Man. I got a real hero, my son. And Spider-Man's kind of
out.
Yeah, Spider-Man, what the hell, dude? He kept calling me, lose my number.
Yeah, we never see the other end of that phone call.
Yeah, he's probably what the heck? But yeah, he carries him off with a cartoony smile. And all right, that's the end. And again, the thing that's going to be the problem with these books, I think, anthologies always have this problem. Are you going to want to come back next, now that we see the lay of the land and that there'll be other creators? I don't know. In this last story, I don't know that that's strong enough to get
I do want to say that the art on this middle story, the J. Jono story, is really pretty awesome. The look of the Man-Wolf, he, when he needs to be a badass, he looks really super scary and strong. There's this one cool panel where it's the word chomp, and it's goes the whole width of the page, and inside the letters is where you see the image of the Man-Wolf biting off a vampire's head, which that's a really awesome look to it. So that's Javier Garrón. Javier Garrón is really doing an amazing job on this.
Yep, it is good. And the last story is the one that's going to continue, and it's not that strong. It's the problem. It really barely feels like
there's not much to it. Yeah.
No, it's Erica Schultz with Bernard Chang on art. Marcel Maiolo usually, I believe, is the color artist that usually does go with Bernard Chang. So it looks pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah. So you end up where it's this whole deal where Dagger, I think Dagger should be talking more about the idea that Cloak is one of the, Dark Force portal things. She kind of mentions a little, but doesn't seem that concerned in my mind.
Yeah, she starts to talk about him, but she
not
doesn't
much,
seem to be.
right?
I mean, she is being attacked by a zillion vampires, so cut her a break.
The one thing I like about this story, like we said, though, barely a story, but it's continuing. We do get Elsa Bloodstone in it, and I didn't realize, I wasn't
in the last panel. Yep.
Yeah, she should be in this event of some sort. It's a shame that she doesn't have a bigger thing, but she's in that. And I think that kind of is the flavor of this whole anthology. You even mentioned earlier, you're going to get some heroes that you might like, you might not get in other things, you might not get a lot of time at all, like a John Jameson. We don't get a lot as Man-Wolf, so it's kind of cool with that. I do like Elsa, but really it's just Dagger walking around talking about, hey, vampires, I used to like this, one guy, pretty cool to me, and Cloak at this one.
Yeah, so she killed some generic vampires at the beginning, and then this barista they used to like, he actually has a name, Varen? Yeah, Varen.
Yeah, Varen.
And he's turned to a vampire, so she's trying to save him, but then a stake comes out of nowhere and kills him, and that's when we say, oh, it is Elsa Bloodstone, and now we're on a team now.
People who are listening to the podcast right now would have heard, but have you read The Amazing Spider-Man this week yet yourself?
Yes, I did.
Okay. It's almost the same thing that happens in that, where there's a guy, I don't think he's that bad. Oh, he's dead. It's like the same thing, but now it's Elsa instead. I kind of like Elsa instead of Kareem.
A lot of the issues this issue are just, let's see these heroes kill some vampires. They're not advancing. I haven't seen the main story advance at all. I guess they can't. It's just, we're in a world full of vampires. Let's see all these different characters kill vampires in their own way.
There is one that it's the Doctor Strange book. If you
I haven't
haven't read that.
I guess the Dracula one actually a little bit too.
Yeah, because the idea with the ending of Blood Hunt #1, you go and you have that continue in the Doctor Strange and see what happens with him. But even then, it ends up setting up something and then says, hey, get back to Blood Hunt 2. Like, you can tell we're not going to do a lot in these tie-ins. And I guess it's up to you to decide if you want like I said, I don't mind things having fun. I think the Avengers was a lot of fun. But I don't love the jokey things. It makes it less. And this kind of ended up in the end, like, again, when you're reading this.
The challenge is telling a self-contained 10-page story where all you probably know is, hey, you're in New York or wherever. There's lots of vampires. Everything's dark. You got 10 pages. What can you do with that other than just, here's some vampire killing, here's some jokes?
Yeah, and actually, we kind of, it's weird. We kind of see you either kill the vampires or you're upset because somebody you know is turned it on, but you can't do anything about it, so it really ends up killing vampires anyway, like you said. Or you could be jokey. Just don't like the jokes as much, but I don't think in my mind that this Dagger Elsa story is strong enough, because this is this is where we're supposed to end and say, all right, I want to continue with this story. Hopefully I like the other two that'll be thrown at us. This isn't strong enough to go forward and say, I need to read this. And it already shows you it really isn't integral to the deal, but what would you give it?
I mean, if you want to see some other characters you don't usually see fighting some vampires, that's exactly what this is. And clearly, if you're a Mark Russell fan, you know that already, and here's some more of that. For me, I thought there's some cool art, especially in that middle story about the man-wolf. That was the best art I've seen so far in this event, probably. It was inoffensive, which is one of the nicest things I'll ever say about a Mark Russell book.
It's true.
Yeah, it's fine. Give it a 6 out of 10.
I'm giving it a 6 as well. I think it's a solid 6. And again, if you, I was just gonna say, if you love Elsa Bloodstone, because that's my favorite. But she's only on one page, so it's not even like that. But again, you don't get to see a man-wolf, and it's kind of cool to see Clint just doing some stuff with some normal people.
I did peek at the previews a little bit, and it is going to be some more of the side female characters going to be joining up with these. So I don't want to give the spoilers. If you want to look at who it is, you can look it up there. But yeah, if you want to see that kind of a team, that's the team.
I'm actually shocked Mark Russell didn't have that tracksuit mafia turn into vampires and come after Clinton. That might have been kind of funny.
That sounds pretty good, actually, yeah. Give him the Russian accents. Yeah.
Oh, it'd be so good. And they're, kind of talk like Dracula. So that'll be kind of neat. But yeah, it's just having fun.
Yeah, that's great. Them to be one who you think is a vampire because of the accent, but no, he's just Russian.
That would be good too. It's just some Russian guy with that
just
haircut.
An old Russian guy, yeah.
And they stab him, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He doesn't. Then he just dies, and now he's wanted for 2 murders. Oh my goodness! But we'll move to the next and the last book on the podcast. It's Venom. It's Venom 33. Written by Al Ewing, art by our buddy Juan Ferreira, letters by VC's Clayton Coles. I do like the art in this.
The art he always does a great job. It is atmospheric. It fits in with the event, but it also looks different. Super cool stuff.
Just that beginning that there's like this bomber coming in and just the
that's
lighting
the best
even
scene
on the
in
deal. It's so good. It's so good.
For the writing and in the art. It looks like a World War II kind of bomber, but like creepy and with like cobwebs hanging for it and spooky as hell. And even the panels are separated by like symbiote goop.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome.
It's really cool.
We see these 2 pilots inside who knows how old they are. I think one is around since 1945, one since 1745, they say.
Yep.
And their job is to drop this bomb on New York City.
Yep.
And they've been charged to do this by Dracula, by Vlad Tepes, however you say that. And it's this coffin. And right now we don't know what it is, except it's a coffin. They're dropping it just like it's, a nuclear weapon out of Dr. Strangelove, and they are scared crapless.
Yeah, they are. They don't even want to do it. Now, I'm not the biggest Al Ewing fan, but he's a good writer. What I do like is when that one guy's like, 45, like I'm from 1745, and then later says indubitably, and it made me giggle that he just used it's like that deal of like, and no, they don't react to it, but I'm like, all right, that's pretty funny that he's using some old English kind of deal or whatnot. I thought it was pretty funny, but the way that Juan works with Al Ewing in this to show that they're afraid of what they have to drop, and they actually start thinking maybe they shouldn't do it because this isn't just going to destroy New York City. Whatever they're going with and in this thing, that does have like almost looks like a big exclamation point on it, like don't open.
Yeah.
It could eat up the whole world. And they are afraid of that. And they say, though, that we have to do this because if you get the sire pissed off, then that's not good. But man, I don't know. And it really plays out well. I thought, and in this, I was like, man, I don't know why. I don't know what you do after this with these guys and whatnot. I kind of like this. And I thought we might get more, but we're going to go back to the regular Venom stuff.
I do want to point out that one of them even quotes Oppenheimer, who's when he says, I am become death, which was Oppenheimer quoting, I think it was the Bhagavad Gita, this ancient Sanskrit writing when he saw the nuclear bomb go off for the first time. So this is really driving home that this person in the coffin they're dropping is bad news.
Yeah, it's the vampire version of a nuclear bomb. It really does feel like you said, even with the Oppenheimer stuff, even more. And me and you haven't been reading Venom. When we did the Marvel podcast, we were doing it when it was still jumping back and forth with Ram V and Al Ewing. Obviously that isn't torn. Grumbach is coming. There's a bunch of different things going on, but I have not read it in years, pretty much. And so going into this, I was a little worried, maybe it would go, but I figured we're doing this to let everybody know because it is a tie-in. People, not everybody is reading Venom. So should you jump in and read it? Is it integral to the whole deal? I don't know that any of these tie-ins are, but this is more for, to me, actually, it feels like it's more for Venom readers, but it's also here that if you happen to read it, you might want to continue with the Venom book. I don't think it's going to elevate the Blood Hunt book, but I think it might be trying to grab some people because it does a lot of background.
A story it's a Venom story set in the same world where the Blood Hunt stuff is going on, but I can't imagine this feeding back into the main Blood Hunt story. But it is really happening in the same world, gives that feeling of being a shared universe, which I really like. And yeah, it's not a bad place to jump in. I did go back and read one issue of Venom, one issue of Carnage, just so I knew what the hell was going on, and was surprised at how little has changed since however long ago we stopped reviewing it.
And I didn't go back and read it. I just jumped in this, and even then I thought, okay, I mean, we're saying things like Normie that we get. We got one of the big things is it says that Dylan has died and that his body, but we do have Dylan in this.
It's weird because Dylan, so in the last issue of Venom, I guess it was issue 32, Carnage uses Dylan to get to that Garden of Meridius at the end of time, and in the process, he kills Dylan. Now, Venom the symbiote saves Dylan's body by, doing symbiotic stuff to it, but he thinks, oh, the soul's gone, he's dead. Oh, the symbiote's so sad that he failed in his mission to protect Dylan that he slinks off. And then afterwards, Dylan wakes up perfectly fine. Exactly why is currently a mystery, but that's what's happened.
You kind of get that from this, at least a bit. You get the idea the Venom symbiote by itself is all upset. And
yeah, they're broken up right now. They're two separate characters.
And you do end up then having Dylan, kind of dealing with things as well with the toxin deal. And, you have mentioned the Normie. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I do recognize. I don't exactly know everything that's been going on, obviously, but I think enough that if I did want to get back into the Venom book, I might be able to do that a little easier than I thought. After this, I don't know that I want to get back into it. I'd have to decide on that. Because
they're in the middle of their own crossover event with Carnage right now. So Symbiosis Necrosis is the current name of their little mini crossover.
And we're heading to another event, a Venom event this summer that they seem to want to just keep pushing. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are symbioted out, but
it seems like there's this core group of people who are just into symbiote stuff and kind of only symbiote stuff. And if you're a part of that group and that's what you love, you got things to read. Good for you.
If you are wondering, again, oh man, should I get this for the Blood Hunt? I would say that you don't need to. If you haven't been reading Venom, have no interest, you can get away with not getting this. But it was okay. And I do like the art. But I mean, he's deep diving in the idea where they bring up Clintar and the cage and things. I'm like, holy moly, like they're bringing up, characters from years ago, not even just his own run. You're bringing in Lee Price. And the idea
I was
of this,
doing some fandom wiki diving, I'll admit it.
Yeah, and he's really trying to tie this in. It's okay. You get Lee Price, pretty much zombie, come out, and there's not much vampire in this. It's more the idea that the world is covered.
Yeah, it seems that the main villain here is it's not the prisoner. What do they call him? The captive, right? Because if the Clintar is the cage is there to house the captive, and he's basically like a vampire is to humans. He is to symbiotes, I guess. What he's doing on Earth, I don't really know. We get a lot of talk about, there's few of us left. We're almost extinct. The character design is kind of cool. It looks almost Jack Kirby-esque to me. Just this big round head on the shoulders and the weird kind of symbol on the forehead. Looks and even the Kirby dots come out of his eyes. Super Jack Kirby.
To me, it looks like Darkseid combined with Black Bolt. Is what it reminds me of. Even the symbol kind of the deal. Like, that's what it looks like. And if you want to see a vampire with the biggest fangs, they're there. They're huge. And it looks great. And you have some action and really detailed stuff. The borders are always the great thing in a Juan Ferreira deal. He really does play, and he's using that symbiote deal, as you say. But by the end, it is the symbiote it's hungering for a host. It's trying to get something there because Dylan's not there. In the meantime, Dylan is kind of by himself. And then at the end, you just end up with this vampire priest that looks crazy the way this is. But again, you get vampires, but not like, it doesn't feel like it's that connected with the deal. But
I don't know about this vampire priest. So Dylan's hiding out in this room, and we saw earlier there was this creature lurking in the shadows, and he steps out, and it's this big fanged vampire priest. Looks awesome, looks scary as hell. But he says, actually, we're kind of on the same side, or we have the same enemies at least. And he says, a lifetime ago, I took Venom's confession, which is a weird cliffhanger to end on.
Yeah, it's very weird. And even before that, right before that, Dylan is talking too much out loud to himself. But at one point, you do get, if you haven't been reading like me and whatnot, he says, I'm meant to be the Codex. I've got the Necro Sword. It's inside me. And that's still stuff from when we were reading. It's that far back. And he says, but I can't summon it on my own. He wants to go and help. He wants to go out and try to save some people and whatnot, but he can't really do it the way he is. And then you get this priest. And I don't know how this plays. And, maybe we'll play like rules with the idea that we'll find out, with the soul and how Dylan went and what what happens if he does get bit by the deal. I don't think or know he will. But, maybe you're going to play something like that because he does look a little ominous at the end, and Dylan's in a karate stance. So I don't know how that will end, but it says to be continued. We'll see what we're doing when it comes out. But it didn't feel as important as I don't know why I would have thought, but it was okay.
It's an okay story. It tells you everything you need to know, more or less, to see what's going on. It reaches back into continuity. It puts this a different kind of a vampire. And I had a good time with it. And like you said, it made me think, maybe I should check out what's been going on in Venom a little bit.
And the funny thing is, we were saying, and I said, for new readers, it really does feel more for lapsed readers like me and you. And one of the things it almost does point out, it's so funny, like you said, you went back and it's almost like, hey, the people who, you might have stopped reading 2 years ago, but just come on, we're still dealing with the same stuff. Like, you're going to know exactly what we're talking about. Come on, that meridian of the garden and all that. Just come on, we're going to do that. So it is kind of funny in that way, but I do think that they're trying to get some of the mojo of the event to try to get some people back on the book because they are going to be doing another summer symbiote event. We'll see. But what would you give this?
Yeah, I had a good time reading it. It's not a fantastic book, but the art is super fantastic. And the writing brings me up to speed enough where I'm having a good time. So I'll give this a 7.5 out of 10. Why not?
I'm a 7. I'm a little lower than you, but still, I actually was surprised. Now, I say that I'd love to hear from what people who have been reading think of it, because it is a lot of catch up and things like that. Like, maybe they might be like, what are we doing here? But
this might feel like
cool.
a timeout from all the momentum they were building up and what was going on there. Sometimes events can do that, and
they do. And I couldn't blame Al Ewing for that. I'm sure that if he had his druthers, he'd probably just be doing his own story in the deal, but they want to get involved.
His books get interrupted a lot. Like his sword book over on the X side got interrupted by 2 whole events and barely got any of his own story out.
Remember the sword, but I think it started tying in the second issue. Like it was one issue, and then boom, it was in an event.
I think it was like 10 issues total, and like 7 of them were tie-ins to an event or another. It was, what do you do?
Ruben's still brewing the day of that deal. That Ruben, like he's still, triumphing, like the idea that he's yelling from the rooftops about the sword. Oh my goodness gracious! But again, it was good to have you on, and we did get that peek of Mark Russell and Bob Quinn, which we didn't even mention. The Bob Quinn art was okay. It wasn't anything like over the top special.
It's drawn to go along with the kind of goofy look to it. It's more bright colors. I forget who the colorist was, but it's not these scary darks, grays, and purples like in some of the other picks. It was drawn to be, here's a goofy humor book, which was fitting for the writing.
That's what it was. So, yep. So we'll see when that comes out and, all that stuff. And if people don't realize, I'm sure they would on the feed, that you and Ruben that we talked about, you do the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men podcast, as you are wrapping up.
And it's an exciting time there at the Weird Dose of X. Yeah, we're almost at the end of the Krakoan era. We have just a few more weeks until that happens, and just a few more weeks until the big episode 100. I should probably plan something for that.
I'm telling you, you say that. I actually, when I was editing this week's podcast, I thought, holy crap, like it's almost 100 issues or episodes. And then I'm like, oh, if the timing would have worked for that first issue of X-Men, the Uncanny
it's really
like
close.
It's very close. It's very close. I'm like, ooh, it would have taken like a little tweak. And
if you want me to take a couple weeks off, Jim, all you got to do is say the word.
The funny thing is, I almost did it, subconsciously. I actually, episode 95, I labeled twice. So the thing, we had 2 episode 95s, because then this one, you just did 97.
Yes.
And I go to do it, I'm like, wait a minute, why is the last one? Oh, I see. I doubled up on 95. Oopsie. But yeah, so with all that, and also to point out to people, I know that a lot of places, especially say YouTube and things like that, a lot of people are down with the X-Men books and the whole Krakoa era and whatnot. And you and Ruben try to be pretty positive with it. And you have enjoyed
we're
a lot
very
of the
honest.
things.
There's 2 main sides to it. There's the Jerry Duggan side of things and the Kieran Gillen side of things. And both of us really like the Kieran Gillen stuff. So that's what we're enjoying. And there's another issue of his coming out this week. I haven't read it yet. X-Men Forever. And that's been some really good time travel-y, timeline spanning back and forth to the White Hot Room and Phoenix and all that great cosmic X-Men stuff.
Yeah, it's more of the powers in that
exactly.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't know if you're even aware that I had been reading all the X-Men books and actually on a podcast talking about them.
Oh, really?
But I'll tell you what that is. It's kind of a weird thing that I got roped into, but I'll tell you that when we're done, because we are done the podcast and we're going to go off and I'll tell everybody what we'll be talking about next week.